So, what happens when you are having to deal with significant loss in your life? Hi, I'm Dr. Regina. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, but just as importantly, I am the granddaughter of a beautiful woman who did lots and lots of gardening. Now, I will tell you for the longest time, this is what all of my plants look like right here. this is this is what they look like. So I can tell you that I had a lot of grief and loss as it related to my plants because I could not figure out how to keep them. And one would think by looking at this one right here that the struggle continues. That's not entirely true. But what do you do when you have grief and loss? What do you do when you've got, you try hard and your business fails and you're pouring into it and you get some good results? Some things are green and pretty, but everything else looks like a hot mess. What do you do? Well, I want to tell you that there are so many wonderful resources. You've had people that have been writing for the last 20, 30 years about different types of grief. We've talked about ambiguous grief, for example, that grief for things that it's not necessarily could be a person, could be a dream or an idea, but it could also be something that's not quite 100% tangible, right? A person's still alive, but unfortunately, for lack of a better term, they're not all there the way that they used to be. Perhaps it's a person that no longer talking, they're not doing the things that they used to do. For all intents and purposes, the person that you knew is no longer there. What do you do with that? Is there any way to salvage that relationship, or do you just kind of cut down to the point where you no longer recognize them and you have to toss out all the other things? Grief is hard, loss is hard, but I do believe that there are some lessons from, grandmother's garden, and I always like to take lessons from not the DSM Bible, but the actual Bible. And I found something. I've often quoted the scripture: "Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why are you in turmoil or disquieted within me? Hope in God." And as Providence would have it, do you know that that scripture is actually quoted twice in the book of Psalms, back to back? First in Psalm 42, but then also in Psalm 43, and it's at the end of both. So I think that there is a place and there's a timing. Actually, I know Leviticus and Ecclesiastes both say that there is a time and a purpose for everything. It says there's a time to grieve, a time to mourn, a time to gather, a time to throw away. And there will be a time in your life where you are going to have loss, where you're going to have to um, give up on some things, give up on some dreams, let go of some things, let go of some dreams, let go of some people that have been in your life. The question is, are you going to be able to do it well, or are you going to be able to do it not so well? There is a concept called grieving well. It's basically where you acknowledge that you have had a loss, you understand the different stages of grief, what type of grief you have, ambiguous, or if it's delayed grief. A person's missing in action and you don't know what's happened to them. You have those different types of grief, you recognize them, and then you go through the grief process. You see what you can learn from that. If it's a person who taught you many things, like my grandmother with gardening, my mother, again, with gardening and plants and such, you see what you can learn from it. If there is anything that you can learn from it, and I can honestly tell you that if there was a life involved, there is some lesson that you can learn from that. And then you go through the process as well as you can, not burying your head, not pretending that it didn't happen, recognizing that it was a loss and that you do need to grieve it. I often see in the trauma space that people, if they've experienced trauma, they just want to go through the trauma uh, therapy and then just kind of move on. And then, of course, go through the grieving process and then move on. Well, first you have to recognize that it is a process. It's going to take time. this plant that's been dying for a very long time. I can cut away the dead parts. I can cut away the things that are not serving it anymore. I can get rid of those things. But for the new growth that's coming back, for that to survive, it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of energy. And you need to understand that when you're in the process of grief, it does take energy from you. You may need to rest more often. You may need to take breaks more often. And that's okay. It's totally okay. You probably want to tell the people that are around you that you're going through a grief process so that they let them know. If it's at home and you need to go and take breaks periodically, let them know that as well. Unfortunately, there are going to be times where you're looking back at your beautiful tree, and instead of seeing a lovely bush, you're seeing something that looks kind of like this. And if that's the case, that is okay. Take it out of the pot that's no longer serving it. Maybe put it in a smaller pot that makes a lot more sense, um, and keep growing. Regardless of what's going on, you just make sure that you are still growing. All right, well, that's it for today. I am Dr. Virginia, and my hope is that you learn to grieve well and that you have a very blessed day on purpose. Take care.